You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
WCYTV.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. It's good to be with you this evening, and there is certainly a lot to talk about. First and foremost, of course, is the President of the United States, Donald Trump, welcoming the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa to the White House today, and then everything just caught fire. And not perhaps to many over on the media side in the international community, the sweet-smelling, fruity smells of American bootlicking on the international stage, by which for decades the American people have been expected to simply invite people over to the White House. President Biden then bends the knee and mumbles through some dementia-ridden praise for foreign nonsense. And then, after he has done so, then promises that the United States will give them, through USAID, lots and lots of money. Yeah, those days are in fact over. And that comes down to the visit today from the South African president. Now, it began, as all normal great White House meetings do, with a little bit of a background story. So the South African situation, at least right now, there are a series of murders which have taken place with the kind of a wink and nod from the South African government in power, which would be the African National Congress, one of the opposition parties, otherwise known as kind of an adjacent party. I think the Democrats and the progressives, so to speak. Right now, the wildly to the left Marxist racial group in the South African nation has been running around killing white people, mostly farmers, as some kind of perceived recompense and reparations for apartheid, which last was actually actively going on in the 80s. So none of the people who are, again, kind of normal active adults right now raising families are or were ever a part of the apartheid crisis. So that all said, the Trump administration allowed a small group of white South Africans, Afrikaners, descendants of the Netherlands, who have been in the country since the 1600s, to come to the United States and flee the persecution, because in that country, right now, people who are white have to live with bars on all of their windows and doors, often with electricity running through them for security. They have to ensure that they don't go to the wrong parts of the country, and the South African government is actively working with local authorities to take any farmland away from any, again, white farmer as some act of racial reparations. And so the Trump administration, after opening up some refugee options for a small group, got lambasted by the media. Oh, how could they do that? Oh, this is just Trump simping for white people. Oh, it's so terrible. Oh, the horror and all this other kinds of nonsense. Now, here's where things get a little more interesting. The beginning with a little bit of a question from an NBC reporter. Always good when Trump leans over to the world leader and says, hey, here's who this individual is, and it's not very good.
Any questions, please?
Mr. President, we welcome white Afrikaner refugees here. Can you explain to Americans why it's appropriate to welcome white Afrikaners here when other refugees like Afghans, Venezuelans, Haitians have all had their protected status revoked?
Well, this is a group, NBC, that is truly fake news. They ask a lot of questions in a very pointed way. They're not questions, they're statements. We've had tremendous complaints about Africa, about other countries too.
By the way, to sum up the president's initial kind of reaction to the question by the NBC News reporter, he is correct. Leading questions are not questions. And if you say, well, Mr. President, you're willing to do X, Y, and Z, so aren't you a really terrible bad person? Aren't you, Mr. President? Aren't you just the worst person ever to live? Yeah, that's not actually a reporter asking a question. And the president is right to call that out, regardless of what you think about the following statements.
From people. They say there's a lot of bad things going on in Africa, and that's what we're going to be discussing today. When you say we don't take others, all you have to do is take a look at the southern border. We let 21 million people come through our border, totally unchecked, totally unvetted. They came from all over the world. In many cases, they're criminals. They come from prisons. They come from mental institutions. They come from street gangs. They're drug dealers. So don't say that we didn't take them. We take them. We're trying to get them out as fast as we can.
So then the President of the United States begins his conversation with South African President Ramaphosa. And in the process, Trump says, look, you are basically tut-tutting a series of murders that only seem to encompass a racially Marxist group going after anyone who looks white in the country. And by tut-tutting, I mean there are some like very mild murder cases, but there's really not a lot of effort by the South African police, by the South African military, by South African intelligence or investigative services to track down the, again, opposition party, which is, again, calling openly for the extermination of white people in South Africa. Again, not individuals who have committed any act of crime, but simply because of the color of their skin, which, as we have said before, which as the entire world has made a rather critical point of, let's say, ignoring, though the United States continues to maintain through the civil rights, through the Civil War, that, in fact, what you do instead of what color you have should define you. But of course, that's not quite acceptable. So now we get to the extra loaded questions where everything goes off the rails. So a journalist reaches out, raises her hand, Trump calls on her, and she asks yet again another loaded question after the South African President Ramaphosa tries to make the case, well, there's not really any genocide going on. Well, this is just embellished. Well, come on. Here's the journalist question where this, in fact, all goes very, very wrong for the South African president really quickly.
What will it take for you to be convinced that there's no white genocide in South Africa?
Okay, question from the journo. What does it take, or what would it take, for you to be convinced that there is no genocide in South Africa? Again, that is a leading question. It is not, what evidence do you have to support your assertion that there is, in fact, a genocide, the systematic attack, targeting, and or extermination of a particular group of people via ethnicity in South Africa? She doesn't ask that. She says, what will it take for you to essentially stop living in this fantasy land? That's the scorn that she heaps. And whoever at the White House, I have my suspicions, but whomever at the White House decided that Trump needs to have the ace up his sleeve that he then proceeds to pull out should be given a very serious raise.
Well, I can answer that for President.
Oh, I forgot. If there was one thing that President Trump really does not like, it is when a foreign leader comes into the White House and cuts the president off and doesn't show the president of the United States the respect that the leader of the free world is in fact due, no matter who it is, whether it's Biden, Obama, Bush, Clinton, even, whether it's the ghost of Abraham Lincoln. When you come into the White House, you show a certain amount of respect to the president. So the South African president, Ramaphosa, just jumps in and cuts him off completely. Says, hold on, I can answer this question for the president.
It's for him. No, seriously.
I'd rather have him answer.
Yeah, I'd rather answer that. It will be.
Our president will respond to you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. President.
It will take President Trump listening to the voices of South Africans, some of whom are his good friends, like those who are here. When we have
we're going to get to those that he brought, his little plants that he brought into the room, that again doesn't go in the way that he thinks it's going to. But lecturing the president in the White House, saying it's going to take the president listening to the people here, is not a move he wants to go down, because you can see this little gleam in Trump's eye as he recognizes, I just might have a few people from South Africa willing to speak on the record about what's going on.
Talks between us around a quiet table, it will take President Trump to listen to them. I'm not going to be repeating what I've been saying. I would say if there was Afrikaner farmer genocide, I can bet you these three gentlemen would not be here, including...
He points to 3 white golfers that he brought from South Africa, by the way.
My Minister of Agriculture. He would not be with me. So...
He also points to his Minister of Agriculture, who is a white individual. So again, the criticism you often hear from the left that the people on the right will have a quote-unquote token black person in their administration so they can fend off claims of racism. In the South African government, the president's office has openly stated that they have allowed this individual to be the Minister of Agriculture because it would look bad if there was not a white person in the administration. Their words, not mine.
It'll take him, President Trump, listening to their stories, to their perspective. That is the answer to your question.
Now, Trump has waited. He has listened to this. And in the back of Trump's mind, I can only picture Trump saying, you want to hear from some people from South Africa, do you?
Mr. President, I must say that we have, wait. We have thousands of stories talking about it. Sure. And we have documentaries, we have news stories, and that. Is Natalie here, somebody here to turn that? I could show you a couple of things, and it has to be responded to.
Yeah, sure.
Let me see the articles, please, if you would, and turn the lights down, and just put this on. It's right behind you.
What follows is truly one of the most incredible scenes of a president of the United States and a foreign leader, not to mention a media who came in with loaded questions to lecture the president of the United States over something that is supposedly not happening. And again, what did the South African president, Cyril Ramaphosa, what did he say to Trump that it's going to take for him to finally leave these fantasies of a genocide that are just totally not happening? Because, yeah, every country that is dealing with trying to hide a genocide is like, yeah, there's a genocide going on here. Yeah, okay. The president, Ramaphosa, says that it's going to take Donald Trump listening to people from South Africa. So then Trump says, hey, is Natalie here? Hey, turn down the lights. I just happen to have a TV here with me, and I've got a little feature presentation here for you. And I kid you not, I watch a lot of these hearings because I have to hop up on panels right afterward, which we're going to get to with CNN here in a couple of minutes. What follows is one of the most incredible scenes. It truly makes the Zelensky situation look a little bit boring.
Turn the lights down, and just put this on. It's right behind you. Johan.
There's nothing this parliament can do. With or without you, people are going to occupy land. We require no permission from you.
Okay, so President Trump begins playing on the screen a video of the individuals in the South African political scene who are openly calling for the murder of the Boer, of white people, basically anyone in South Africa who is at all a descendant of those from the Netherlands. And so the South African president immediately turns around and asks Trump to shut it off because he doesn't want to hear this. He's very, hands over the ears, hear no, see no, say no evil. He just wants to whistle past this particular graveyard. And Trump says, no, you're going to watch it. And by the way, the little diplomats that the South African president trotted out also sit there on the couch utterly ashamed.
You, from the president, from no one. We don't care. We can do whatever you want to do. Who are you to tell us whether we can occupy land or not? We are going to occupy land. South Africa, occupy land. That's who we are.
So what you were watching in the room is a lot of media who have now panned their cameras over. The lights have been lowered so that everyone can watch this video that's been brought in. The South African president and the individuals who are from that delegation, whom are black, are all turning their heads away from the TV screen. Humorously, the one of the golfers that was brought over to tell Trump later that there's no genocide, I promise, is also turning his head away. Everyone else in the room has their eyes glued to the screen. Because Julius Malema, the leader of the South African Economic Freedom Fighters, is openly, again, without any kind of retribution, without any, hey, you can't call for the murder of people, is openly chanting some of the most horrid things possible. And yes, we do in fact have the clip to the White House shared And here you go.
There's nothing you can do. There's nothing this parliament can do. With or without you, people are going to occupy land.
Wait a minute. Are those like the seats of the South African parliament? So this isn't just the way that this is framed online by the media is that there's just, some way out there, guy just chanting in the middle of a field, kill the white people. And that's totally different. No, this is in the South African parliament. That there is an individual chanting and the people next to him, which look stable and they're bright red, throwing up the classic Marxist fist in the air, where he's chanting, normal humanitarian things.
We require no permission from you, from the president, from no one. We don't care. We can do whatever you want to do. Who are you to tell us whether we can occupy land or not? We are going to occupy land. Yes. South African, occupy land.
So he's saying they are going to take the land. They're going to occupy the land of any white farmer. And no one can tell him anything else. Now, that is an open threat, and it is, fact, rather treasonous. You would believe that perhaps at this moment, the South African president might go, yes, I condemn this. This is a very bad thing. How could he dare say that? I agree, Donald Trump. This is a very bad man. Nope. He sits there with his face pointed towards the ground because he's a coward.
That's who we are.
Honorable member,
I want to do. You can withdraw my membership from this useless parliament.
Honorable. Yes, honorable member.
Must never be scared to kill. A revolution demands that at some point there must be killing, because the killing is part of a revolutionary act.
Okay, now hang on here a second. I was told that this is, that he's just making like analogies, like we really just need reparations. So what part of you must not be afraid to kill? What is this, like Kylo Ren from like the Star Wars sequels? Kill the past. Let it die. Kill it if you have to. Like what is the world? How can you possibly spin this away from open calls for the slaughter of whom? Who is it they want to kill?
Shoot to kill. Yamaza. Kill the Boer.
Oh, kill the Boer. Oh, the white people. Ah, it's very clear. Oh, why is it very clear? Oh, because he said so openly. This goes on for another 3.5 minutes.
When you want to hit them hard, go after a white man.
In the future, I'm saying to you, we have not called for the killing of white people, at least for now. I can't guarantee the future.
Yeah, but I mean...
So again, the entire time. Now, to go back to the original clip where we are watching them watch the video, you can actually see Fox News cuts over to a split screen. The South African president refuses to look. So let me get this straight. So the president of the United States is allowed to be asked repeatedly, completely off topic, out of nowhere style nonsense. And the South African president is allowed to cut Trump off from answering. Says he needs to listen. He needs to listen to everyone in South Africa. And then all of a sudden, when Trump says, okay, well, let's see some people from South Africa, what they have to say. And then there's the guy openly calling for genocide. Amazing. Now the South African president doesn't want to listen. Amazing. I for one, am shocked. Okay, well, not that shocked. So now we get from these particular clips to the South African president's response, where he basically says, that's not actually happening, I guess. There's just a figment of the imagination. Guy spent a little too long in the Willy Wonka magic tunnel of terror. No one's quite sure. So the South African president now very emasculated. Essentially, the president of the United States neutered him in front of the international community for trying to pretend that active murder of a racial group is not going on in his country. Because we're all supposed to pretend that South Africa is wonderful now. It's a lot of rainbows and sunshines, and the spirit of Nelson Mandela flows through the country like a river of joy. So the South African president then, again, thinking, oh, Trump is a rich white guy. So what do all rich white guys like? Oh, bring a couple of his golfer buddies over to lecture him. Hey, golfer buddies of Donald Trump, tell him how everything's wonderful here. Tell him, or you'll never see your family again. Tell him how wonderful the South African nation is, And it doesn't quite go the way that the South African president is looking for.
I grew up in an area in South Africa that is a farmland area, Polokwane. And there is some issues up there. Obviously, my dad was a property developer as well as a part-time farmer. And yeah, some of these buddy farmers got killed. The farm is still going, my brother.
Oh, so I thought it was all peaceful. I grew up in these areas of the farmland, and yeah, there are in fact a lot of farmers killed, but the farms are still going. Oh yeah, and oh sure, a lot of their friends and families were slaughtered, but they're still keeping the crops coming in. So I mean, hey, woohoo!
Let's run it, but it's a constant battle with farms trying to burn the farms down to chase you away. So it is a concern to try and make a living as a farmer. And at the end of the day, without farmers, there's no food on the plate. So we need the farmers to produce the food.
Farming, right? He wouldn't do it. He wouldn't even want to do what you're doing. Right? They love farming. They don't want to leave. But it's a struggle.
Yeah, and food and fresh water is the most important thing in life. Without those two things, you can't survive.
Okay, so you've got the same aren't farmers wonderful? Yeah, we know farmers are in fact very, very important. Then he admits something that maybe the South African president wouldn't want the guy on his South Africa's wonderful side to come out and admit.
How is the water there?
The water's great, obviously. All the water comes out of the borehole, out of ground for us down there. But yeah, it is a battle to get the water out sometimes when all the equipment gets stolen all the time that you're trying to get the water out.
So does your family and your brother, do they feel safe on the farm?
They live beyond.
Do they feel safe on the farm?
Behind electric fences, try and be at night safe. But it is constant whenever you leave that something could happen. And
so they all have to live behind electric fences with bars on every single door and window? And they're told that if they leave their farm ever, that someone might just come in and take it. Again, that's like the advice of the South African government. Oh, that's not like a systematic action of, again, racial discrimination in the taking of property and life from individuals. I mean, come on, it's not like a genocide. It's just kind of like, a genocide. Incredible. By the way, the African National Congress, whom the president of South Africa is a member of, the African National Congress is currently the in power party and has been in power since Nelson Mandela came through. In their letter talking about rejecting the falsehood of these Afrikaner refugees, again, I will remind the boys and girls and squirrels out there watching this broadcast or listening to it, that we have footage of these particular South African refugees. Like, we do. We actually have the footage of the individuals getting off of the plane, walking through the airport. Do we actually have that ready to go? Yeah. Okay, here we are. We have some adults in what look to be between their 20s and 40s, like a couple of people who look like they're maybe in their early 60s, and then children. So that's who these people are, right? I mean, they're not old, hardened criminals. The letter from on the 13th of May, so just a week ago here, from the African National Congress says, what the instigators of this falsehood seek is not safety, but impunity from transformation. They flee not from persecution, but from justice, equality, and accountability for historic privilege. Oh, so it's not that, they're fleeing because of being persecuted. They just didn't want to be persecuted. Oh, well, they didn't have everything stripped away from them. That's why they left. Because I don't know if you guys know this, but throughout history, when you seize the farm, typically the family that's on the farm usually gets dealt with rather severely, whether they're the Ukrainians under the Nazis or the Soviets, whether it be the farmland that was stripped and ravaged by, for example, Native American crews, or vice versa, or whether we're talking about in Cambodia or in Japan through the myriad of Asian nations that it butchered and raped. Or here in South Africa, whenever a farm is taken, the man is taken out and is forced to his knees and forced to watch his wife, and if he has any daughters, be violated, and then he's shot or hanged. That is how every single farming raid of a seizure of land has gone for the last several hundred years. And it is happening in South Africa. Why do we know this? Because we have the photos, the articles, and the documentation. And the media can't stand this. They can't stand it. Because God forbid that a refugee allowed into the country not be on the approved paint sachet. Oh no, this color isn't on our list of approved colors to appreciate. After all, white people have it wonderful everywhere. That's what our entire political ideology believes. So, we can't have white people coming into the country. My God, everyone knows that the darker you are, the more moral and wonderful you are, according to people like Gloria Ladson-Billings. So now that we swing that through, there was an NBC reporter who asked about a Qatari jet. Trump ran him over with a Mack truck. And then the CNN panel decided to weigh in because there's the media side of this that is just brutal. Of course, every time you have any kind of a White House press thing like this, all of the pundits, the analysts, and the correspondents, I would be the national correspondent for the Daily Signal, they have us on the air ready to go. And then as soon as that's over, they switch to the panel, and the panel talks about it. CNN decided to get the angriest, whiniest Karens they could find to, again, ignore the video and just say that Trump is a big, bad, stinky man.
Cyril Ramaphosa brought his best diplomatic self to this meeting, but nothing could have prepared him for this multimedia ambush that...
Oh, okay. So it's always the same. This world leader came, and he had his best diplomatic self ready to go. He was shining like an image from God. And then Trump came in, and he ran over them, ambushed. It's horrible. Always the same thing. Always the snooty accent that comes in and says, oh, he's back. Oh, it's an ambush. Terrible ambush.
President Trump laid out with video, with printed out news stories. This was a laundry list of debunked conspiracy theories.
Wait a minute. How do you have videos of a guy in South Africa in the Parliament of South Africa calling for genocide, and it's like, oh, these are debunked conspiracy theories? Really? You gonna try this again? Well, open the floodgates, because boy, howdy, are they trying it. We've got all kinds of articles that are coming out. The Washington Post at 2:15, in an extraordinary exchange, President Donald Trump amplified false claims that white Afrikaners have been victims of a genocide in a meeting with blah, 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 blah. All kinds of nonsense. Just shameless. I guess they have not learned yet. The PBS news crew came out and tried to run it, and they had to walk it back immediately. They said President Donald Trump confronted Ramaphosa, accusing him of not protecting white farmers from violence while playing misleading videos that back up controversial and unfounded claims of white genocide in the country. Again, they make it sound as though Trump just cut camera to a bunch of white people going, oh, we're being hit, like Brian Williams covering a war story. When Brian Williams is like, I'm here outside of the bombing site, mortars are flying down. And then the camera cuts over and Brian Williams is faking it. They're trying that here as though, again, we all don't have the exact footage of the people in the South African parliament calling for genocide. So PBS eventually has to walk it back. They say white farmers have been murdered in South Africa, but those murders account for less than 1% of more than 27,000 annual murders nationwide. Now, hang on a second here. I'll allow one more. They also say experts said the deaths do not amount to a genocide, and President Trump misleads about land confiscation. They're so desperate. Now, hang on a second here. I seem to remember PBS saying very clearly that it didn't matter that the number of white on black police officer altercations in this country were so small compared to every other kind of murder, every other kind of crime, every other kind of altercation in this country. The fact that it existed at all was evidence of systemic racism. Just because there are people that are concerned that they could see a police officer and they could attack them, well, hey, that's enough evidence for me But now all of a sudden you have people that are fleeing South Africa, picking up everything. Again, their families have been there since the 1600s. Because there are people being openly murdered on their farmland, dragged out, families sexually assaulted, and then shot. Well, I mean, that's not enough for a genocide. Sorry, you don't have enough tickets for a genocide. Looks like you're just going to have to go with the stuffed panda. My God. Libs of TikTok, Chaya Reichik actually put together a pretty decent graphic of essentially all of these media stories now. All over, from NPR to BBC to The Guardian to CNN to The Independent to The Telegraph to etc., that are all saying Trump ambushes. That's the word of the day. So now the new media term, like Republicans pounce, it's ambushes. Trump ambushes. Oh, horrible. With a video from people in his own country who are openly calling for murder. Something that is not legal at all in the United States or in South Africa. Trump's like, but you aren't going to arrest him? He's like, I cannot hear you. I am looking at my own knees. CNN, President Trump pushes unsubstantiated claims of white genocide. Phenomenal. Even Getty Images, who provides a lot of the thumbnails and like media pictures for the news world, also is trying to say this, that, oh, well, how could Trump withdraw the United States ambassador, or excuse me, Trump withdrew the United States ambassador from South Africa. How could he have done that? Oh, it's so terrible. These unsubstantiated claims. The media is not going to learn at all. And you can make the guess as to whether it's because they're just stupid or because they are willingly malicious. And I think that the best case right now to look at this a little closer is to look at the Jake Tapper and the Alex Thompson from Axios, the book Original Sin, where they're now trying to distance themselves. Really more, they're trying to escape the sinking ship of the Democrat Party right now, which is in open collapse because of the hiding of Biden's cancer diagnosis and his dementia, and then covering that up and then trying to cover up that cover-up. Megyn Kelly had a phenomenal interview with Jake Tapper that I really encourage you to go listen to. Again, I know I'm breaking the rule of a broadcaster. You're not really supposed to say, hey, you should go listen to this other show. Doesn't matter. Absolutely go listen to that episode. It's phenomenal. She does an excellent job of calling Jake Tapper on the carpet. Alex Thompson, though, was asked a little bit more about this whole Biden scheme. Again, he was one of the Axios Washington, D.C. reporters. His answer is straight up startling how revealing it is.
When you were reporting this, did people in his inner circle, did those that you talked to acknowledge that the media, were they surprised by how complicit the media was?
It was interesting. I had one conversation with someone. This was after the election while we were reporting this book. This person said, listen, yes, we deserve blame for X, Y, Z. We were hiding him. This person also sort of got in my face and they said, listen, the media deserves some blame too. Like, we were sort of amazed at some of the stuff we were able to spin
and get away with
on. They in some ways,
it's like the bank robber complaining that the safe wasn't locked or something.
So again, Thompson is playing this, and I'm going to make the assumption in Alex's favor here that he's not talking about himself as though they were spiting him, because he was talking about the media here. That the media was so willing to go along with whatever came from Karine Jean-Pierre's lips. Whatever she said, didn't matter. Trust the lady in the Spirit Halloween Al Capone costume. That the Biden administration was either aghast at how gullible the media is. It's the same media now that's ready to rush and say, oh, I trust whatever you say, South African president. No problem. You say that no one's being killed. I mean, okay, well, there are being people killed, but I mean, come on, it's not a genocide or anything, even though there's that guy from South Africa in parliament calling for a genocide. Okay, whatever you say. It's the exact same crew that after the most blatant embarrassment in almost the history of the legacy media, now you've got CBS bringing on a medical contributor, and former Biden transition official, because, of course, to suggest, well, actually, none of us had any idea about Joe Biden's cancer.
thought it took a while to do that. Wouldn't he be getting regular checkups?
Yeah, so it depends on the kind of cancer you're talking about here. We do know it's quite aggressive again. So the time in which it would take to spread to the bones is going to be shorter than with a less aggressive cancer. And he's 82. Normally, doctors will stop screening for prostate cancer at 75 or so, because after that, the prostate cancers you typically pick up are very slow growing. And so the harms of all of the testing and treatment for something that may not kill you, you're talking about risk versus benefit. It may.
That is insane. That is insane. Stop for just a moment and consider what she just said. That after 75, we stop checking for prostate cancer because it's a real slow moving cancer. What? First of all, that's not true medically at all. It has never before been so easy to check for prostate and some other forms of cancer because they can check the PSA levels in your bloodstream. And if you're getting blood work done, because again, the research and development of the medical industry in the United States is second to none, we have made it extremely easy and really inexpensive to check someone's blood for the possibility they have prostate cancer. Also, again, Biden's family history is riddled with cancer. The president of the United States at the time, Joe Biden, said so himself. He said, "We grew up around oil slicks in Delaware. That's why everyone in my family and I have cancer." So they stopped checking. Oh, well, prostate cancer moves really slow. What? He was the president of the United States, the most medically observed individual on the face of the earth, more than the Pope, more than Bubble Boy. That's the immunocompromised kid movie they had from ages ago. There's no one who is watched more by doctors than the president. Every time they take a urine sample, a blood sample, a stool sample, or a free sample from Costco from the president of the United States, they always check for everything. Because what? Are you going to miss something with the president? Well, apparently here, yeah, they did. And the media is just, oh yeah, I mean, hey, Biden had cancer once before. He had a melanoma. As producer Nick points out with his pre-med degree, he points out that when you have a specific type of cancer, they then screen you for all other kinds of cancer. The audacity of the media to desperately attempt this kind of nonsense, just forever and ever, amen, is it going to be exactly why they can't even begin to cover things objectively, like, for example, the big, beautiful bill that the Trump administration was able to meet with House Republicans today, and they came to consensus. We're going to head over to Representative John James of Michigan waiting on the line for us. I may have kept him a few minutes over, but I think it's worth it. You're not going to want to miss it. Stick around. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first out of 93 WIBC. Now, as loath as this Hoosier is usually to discuss Michigan, we're making a very key exception here. Those of you who have followed the show know that during the election, I went up to Clinton Township, just slightly north of Detroit, and it changed everything for my reporting. What I heard from people who had worked in the auto industry for 20, 30 years on the line, who were tired of being screwed over. Well, they're represented by a guy who squeaked in the first election and has since then become more popular, which for a Republican in Michigan is like, I don't know, like finding a needle in 13 haystacks. Representative John James of Michigan's 10th. Thanks for joining us, man.
Of course. Thanks for having me. But don't believe the Democrat lies out there that you may be getting south of the border. Just because Gretchen Whitmer is the best business development person Indiana has ever had, the governor of our state of Michigan is pushing our jobs south and everywhere else. Don't believe what they tell you. Michigan's actually a red state. Michigan's a red state that's hungry for leadership. Michigan is a state that actually voted for our president twice. We have a majority in Congress who are Republican, and we just took back the House of our state legislature. I'm looking forward to doing what I can to serve the people of the 10th Congressional District, serve the people of Michigan, and help turn this ship around because, my goodness, we certainly do need it.
So we'll get to talking about the big, beautiful bill. I know there's a huge economic need for the individuals of Michigan, of Indiana, of the entire United States, for that matter. And given it's a national audience, my producer's already giving me looks that I need to stop talking about Indiana. So
he's just jealous of the Great Lakes states. It's okay. You can let them argue. We have all
Midwest
the water, agriculture. Yeah, Midwest is best, of course.
Anywho, so I got to ask what it's like sharing the national stage with Snoozy Susie over in committee and Tanadar screaming what are essentially Napoleon Dynamite quotes about President Trump. Gretchen Whitmer is currently trying to hide from the cover-up she actively participated in with Joe Biden. This has to be one of the wildest times to be in Michigan and watch your representatives on the national stage. I mean, no one's quiet, that's for sure.
No, but they were sure as heck quiet when they covered up for Joe Biden for the past 4 years. They were sure as heck quiet when we watched 45,000 automotive jobs leave the state of Michigan. They were sure as heck quiet when they let over 10 million illegal immigrants come over, and now they're getting better rewards, better benefits than people who've been here for hundreds of years and struggling. They've been quiet for a long, long time, so that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody.
I know that it's considered very, very taboo to, interrupt a representative when they're in the middle of listing stat after stat after stat. I know that you're upset about those 45,000 auto jobs leaving, but in return, you were going to get 15 electric vehicle manufacturing jobs.
Yeah, of course. Well,
that's comparable.
Well, you know what? That's liberal math for you. As long as they're willing to completely crater an entire industry to benefit the darter snail,
and all of the industries dependent on those industries.
Correct. I mean, talk about national audiences. This isn't just about automotive industry in Michigan. This is about your dealers, your car dealerships in your local area. I don't care when you go and you watch a Little League baseball game this year. You look at the sponsorships on the billboards, on the scoreboards, in the back, in the outfield. I guarantee you, there's going to be a local dealer out there. When you look at somebody who's delivering your Amazon package, or you look at somebody who's delivering your Grubhub, that's going to be somebody in the gig economy who is trusting that we're going to have vehicles that they can choose, right? Not just a one size fits all, right? But they can choose their own vehicle and they can get one economically. But under Joe Biden, the inflation cost went up so much, almost $12,000 per year, and people couldn't afford that. So right now what we're doing, passing this big, beautiful bill, is putting more money back into your hands by having a Made in America tax credit. So we are incentivized to build and buy here. Make sure that we protect and preserve the child tax credit, people who are trying to grow their families and take care of them. Make sure that we're doing all of those things so businesses can grow and families can thrive. And oh, by the way, we're securing the border. We're getting our energy independence. We're doing all these things of bringing the regulatory barriers down. And that's not good just for the plants and factories that are coming to Indiana and Michigan, but it's also good for our farmers, people who have been struggling to make ends meet. That's going to provide major relief. So we are putting Americans first. We're supporting President Trump's big, beautiful bill, and it can't come a moment too soon.
And that brings us over to the tax policy as well, right? I know I say tax policy, everyone gets really excited. I'm sure everyone's jumping up and down listening or watching to this right now. Tax policy, let's go. But when you look at the economy, you are starting to see small businesses and for that matter, entrepreneurs and individuals in the consumer section of the economy start to show a level of confidence ticking upward that hasn't ticked upward in a very, very long time, in the assumption that we're starting to look at some of these tax cuts made permanent. And that's something that the American economy desperately needs.
You are so right. You hit the nail right on the head. When I had the opportunity to speak at the RNC last year, I was speaking not as much about the future as I was about the recent past. Look, we don't even have to imagine what better looks like. We just have to remember President Trump, with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, got us an economy so good, Democrats were trying to give Obama the credit for it. And so now we're not experimenting here because we have experience. President Trump's leadership has already led to economic gain. And already you're seeing him negotiate peace and trade deals that previous administrations had only fantasized about. And when you see the reaction when he threatens to hold our allies and our adversaries accountable, you end up with the Mexicans surging 10,000 people up to our southern border. And southern border apprehensions skyrocketed or have plummeted. And he did that, and Mexico paid for it. The Canadians surged $1 billion to secure the northern border. Michigan is a northern border state. And anybody telling you that fentanyl has not come over on the northern border, they're lying to you. 60 Minutes actually did a piece a couple of weeks ago where they actually got one of those drug and human traffickers to admit that he comes over himself and brings 30 kilos of fentanyl himself per month. You know how much that is? Well, let's dive into that. A deadly dose of fentanyl is approximately 0.42 milligrams. That's 5 to 7 grains of salt. You can fit over 30 million in just 30 kilos of what one person could bring over the northern border in 1 month.
Oh, yeah. And that's, again, well, that's just the fentanyl side of things. I mean, wasn't it just in early April, like 380 pounds of cocaine seized at Ambassador Bridge over by Detroit, Windsor?
That's right.
That sounds pretty northern border to me.
Pretty northern border to me. And so President Trump is negotiating, and now it's up to Congress to act. It's up to Congress to codify, to put in statute President Trump's executive orders. We have been working. It's been one of the most productive Congresses in recent memory. So don't believe the lies. Don't believe the hype. When the Democrats lie about us, we'll tell the truth about them. And Democrats are about to vote. They're about to vote to keep illegal immigrants on your Medicaid. They're about to vote to make sure that if you are ineligible, the ineligibles are taking away from people like pregnant and postpartum women, people who are disabled, people who are struggling with substance use disorders, our elderly. The Democrats are about to vote to bleed off our vital resource that should go to the neediest over to people who just choose not to work when they're able-bodied. These are the things that most people look at and say, this is unacceptable, and that's why we have a mandate to make America great again under President Trump's leadership.
Again, just to, apologies, to make things, again, kind of the Great Lakes, the Rust Belt states who have really suffered under the misallocation of resources from the federal government, from their own state governments over the last couple of decades. Something that has infuriated a lot of those who lost their jobs. My dad lost his job, went down to Mexico in 06, 07. And then, of course, talking to people on the UAW strike line during 24.
Beginning with a daily signal outside the Ford manufacturing plant, talking with a lot of the UAW picketers. Of course, the big conversation here is President Biden, who was not at this specific place yesterday, but was at a smaller plant. The strike captain asked a lot of individuals here not to talk to the media. However, the few that we talked to indicated that they were not a fan of Biden's economic policies, not regarding EVs, not regarding taxes, thought that him coming here was rather performative.
I've heard a lot of people say things that don't exactly fit the party line that they're supposed to carry, at least as far as a lot of union leadership had done previously. Well, we need Republican Congress not to take all of this aid away. When I talk to the people on the line, they say, I don't want my Medicaid going to illegal immigrants. I don't want my Social Security going to illegal immigrants. I don't want money going to subsidize green energy projects in California when I'm the one who's been putting money into the system my whole life. Why am I not getting any of it back?
Look, Michigan has been at the short end of the stick of this for the longest period of time because of failed leadership. Every time a Democrat takes over Michigan, we lose population. Every time a Republican takes over Michigan, we gain population. And there's a reason, because money and talent flows where it's treated with the most respect. And right now, Michigan has been disrespected. Our automotive industry has been disrespected. And President Trump respects our automotive. He respects our hard workers. And folks in my district have a very attuned BS meter. They know when somebody is listening. They know when somebody cares. I care. President Trump cares. And we are leading by example. Part of these tough negotiations are required because the automotive industry has lost 300,000 jobs. 300,000 jobs since NAFTA was signed. Since we signed our own manufacturing death warrant when I was back in 8th grade in the Detroit area, we need to do everything that we can to bring our automotive production back so that we can be strong and on our own. So we have our manufacturing independence, and so that we can continue to offer our children a better life than what we had. President Trump is doing his part to make America great again by making sure that he puts America first and he levels the playing field internationally. But we have a long way to go in order to get Michigan back on a level playing field. All this opportunity, trillions of dollars of investment the president is getting back into the United States of America, and very little of it is going to Michigan. There's opportunities. I think the tariffs. I think there was an announcement. I think it was Hyundai. I think it was Honda. Both Honda and Hyundai. Okay,
yeah, I know. I can't stop winning. Yeah.
But Indiana had those opportunities. Ohio's getting opportunities, but they're stopping short of Michigan's southern border. Why? Because of the business environment in Michigan, because of the family climate in Michigan. And that's going to change. So I'm here to support President Trump and his big, beautiful bill to get that thing passed in the next couple of days, to get Congress to execute on the mandate the American people have given us. And then we're going to continue to lead effectively and have a government that you can be proud of.
Last thing here, and I cannot help it. You mentioned that whenever there's a Democrat that's in charge of Michigan, there's a lot of population loss. Whenever a Republican is in charge of Michigan, the state experiences growth. I can't help but notice the governor that you have now, the one who did the weird Dorito sexual communion abomination thing right before the election. She's not super duper popular as she claims to be. I happen to notice you come from a rather mixed district, at least ideologically diverse as it is. Any chance that we might eventually have a friendly gubernatorial administration from the north with the James name on it?
Well, we're doing everything we can to make that happen. If you want to talk about the type of district I have conservative MAGA warrior Lisa McClain, my good friend to the north, and I have weird sellout traders Rashida Tlaib and Sri Tanadar to my south. And in the middle is the 10th Congressional District. This is a very strong and very diverse district where we focus on the fundamentals. We focus on things like economic opportunity. We focus on things like public safety. We focus
I've really never seen so many tradesmen in a single district.
It is really phenomenal.
So many in a single district.
It's phenomenal. People who work hard for a living, and they expect their representatives to work as hard. So that's what I'm doing. I'm excited to have the opportunity to bring my experience as a combat veteran to bear, understanding what it takes to keep America safe, because I've done it before, and bring that to Michigan to keep Michiganders safe and avoid crises to begin with. Also, a business leader who grew my family business, automotive logistics in Michigan, from 100 jobs to 500 jobs, and from 35 million to over 300 million in 10 years. Bringing that experience in business is what we absolutely need. And then with the relationships that I've developed with the president and the administration and folks here, being able to deliver for the state of Michigan is something that we're going to critically need. We need leadership change. We need culture change. And I'm excited to have the experience and the skill set to bring both.
I think that you're, again, right on the nose. Representative John James, Michigan's 10th. Thank you very much for joining us for a couple of minutes.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be back in just a second. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. It's time for just a few of the good old-fashioned quick news reactions, because if I really don't start making time amid the insane deluge of news, the flash flood of news, for a few of the video clips that y'all are sending in that producer Nick has lined up for me to suffer through, we're just never going to get to them. So I have been beating around the bush on this one, but given the comments about South Africa's, again, current racial strife, we might have a clip from TikTok that brings it all together and it rests on the gingers. The gingers might be the solution to any kind of racial strife in South Africa. At least that's what is kind of alleged by this one TikToker.
I just need to remind y'all again, everyone who is ginger, who has red hair, those are black people. All gingers are black people. If they have red hair, they are black. You see a white man with red hair, that's a black man. You see a white woman with red hair, that's a black woman. Gingers are black. All gingers.
Wow. You learn something every day. I didn't know that man, I'm going to have to be really careful. That's just that is a thing someone said. And I hope she's joking. The look on her face is dead serious though. What a weird thing for that ginger lady to say. All right, we've got next Bernie Sanders. All of the politicians are now heading on podcasts. It's the hip thing to do. So, don't blame them. They're a lot more enjoyable than the Sunday shows on ABC, for example. So Bernie Sanders decided to go on a podcast and learned a lesson. The lesson that he learned is you can't always control what the podcaster is going to say. And he gets basically slapped for continuing to support the DNC.
The problem I think a lot of voters had is like they didn't even know if it was her. We didn't even know if Biden was president. We didn't even know if these were her talking points. And we felt that over the last 4 elections, Democrats, we felt that we didn't have a say on who could be president. We talk a lot about the Republicans being autocrats and oligarchs and taking over democracy, but from the Democrat perspective, and I'm a lifelong Democrat, I felt like the Democratic Party completely removed the democratic process from its constituents. And
I like how he says removed, as though the democratic process for its constituents used to exist. Again, Chicago has the reputation of dead people voting for a reason, and it is not a recent one.
I think they need to have some accountability of that.
No argument here.
I donated for you. I wanted you to, like, 2016, I was like, this is going to happen. This guy's going to do it. And it felt like they stole it from me. And I'll be honest, it broke my heart when you supported him.
Look, but you have, in the world that I live in, you got a choice.
Hey, in the world of owning several lake houses, if you want to keep getting money and donations, you have a choice. You give me lots of money so I can run again and again. I don't have any principles. What I have is multiple homes and private planes to fly me around with AOC. She's a young Latina woman. She's like, I'm excited about things that are currently going on. Dylan Mulvaney, otherwise known as the dude in a dress, who Bud Light thought, yeah, that resonates with our audience, is so desperate to stay relevant that he has resorted to just running around in random cities, counting how many days it's been since he started wearing skirts. And I guess that's the move now.
Oh my God, it's day 1096 of being a girl. It's year 3, and that's me on a billboard in Times Square. Ah! I've got 3 Bs, a book, a bath bomb, and a billboard. Oh, wow. Now I think we should hand out.
You don't have breasts, though. Those weird fake bubbles on your chest are what's commonly known as embarrassments. No, just for kicks and giggles here, I would like to point out that having a Times Square billboard is not actually that big of a deal. I'm finding out more and more and more as I, kind of go along that a lot of random people have had billboards in Times Square. I thought when I was a kid, oh, wow, Times Square, that's incredible. But that's because I grew up in a cornfield in Indiana. And then you find out that, like, Times Square, they'll give you a billboard if you have $3.50 and like a half a stick of chewing gum. So good for him. This next one is apparently a lady suggesting that it's far, far, far better to choose bears over men. And it just gets really weird. Slam poetry is a weird thing in general. I feel like slam poetry is an exclusive sport for people who weren't bullied enough. But anyhow.
Be attacked by your own species, so I'd rather feel the claw of a bear rake through flesh than a man's hand carving the innocence from this body. At least the only thing a bear can carve from this body is blood.
At first I was wondering why the young, genderly ambiguous individual on the bottom of the screen was standing there emotionalizing like it's a weird conditioner commercial. And then I saw them start chanting together real special stuff. Go, please, ladies, I think. Continue.
Blood,
I'd rather a bear's teeth rip through flesh than a man steal the voice from my body, pry my words from my tongue.
At least the only thing a bear can steal from this body is blood. I'd rather a bear dismember this body unrecognizable.
Okay, so I do love it when the left accidentally quotes scripture. So there's a verse in Matthew. It says, "Fear not he who can destroy the body, but rather fear him who can destroy both body and soul in hell." Meaning that it is better not to fear individuals. Rather, it is far more important to fear the loss of one's soul, because that is, in fact, what is far more important than this corporeal form. Now, that's not what they were saying. They're mad at men. Daddy issues, just really a lot of lifelong lasting problems. Anywho, Governor Tim Walz, I wanted a chance to talk about this. He decided, I'm really concerned. What schools out there are out there looking for speakers? You're like, who can we bring to inspire our students? And you bring the most feminine man ever to run as vice president to your students. Well, regardless, Tim Walz shows up, does a couple of chorus line kicks, sings a song from Little Orphan Annie, and then tries telling them all that Donald Trump is, again, Hitler, because that's the only line we got these days, boys and girls.
This is what the crumbling of rule of law looks like in real time. And it's exactly what the founders of this nation feared. A tyrant abusing power to persecute scapegoats and enemies. Look,
I'm pretty sure what the founding fathers feared was a group of people who wanted to come in and take their guns and tax them all the way to hell and back.
I get it. There's nervous folks on my side of the aisle. They don't want us to touch any of this. I keep hearing this. Oh, the polling really, it sucks talking about this.
That's a really interesting admission. Who on the left right now is saying, don't talk about Donald Trump, that, you think he's a fascist? That's the only message the left has right now. Every 15 minutes, Representative Eric Swalwell pees his own pants, walks in front of the camera and says, Donald Trump is a fascist. Every time, like every single day, a new Democrat comes forward and screams about dastardly deeds, or that Trump is going to be the worst dictator in the history of this entire country. Every time, every day, it's a new Democrat. They roll them out. Like the entire Guess Who board for Democrats. Like if you said, does he say Donald Trump's a fascist? You have to then clear out all of the guesses because that's in fact correct. Amazing stuff from Tim Walz. James Comey, the guy who was the former FBI director, who has this weird obsession with linking everything to the Russians. Imagine, the worst investigator you can possibly think of, and then give him a massive ego. And that, in fact, is James Comey. He's gotten a lot of flack for that 8647 Instagram post that a grown man made out of seashells. So to remind everyone, he posted this picture on Instagram, because he's always posting pictures of him like standing in front of trees going, just thought about writing today. Essentially, he's a middle school girl who discovered typing for the first time. Very exciting for this grown man. And he arranged a bunch of seashells on a beach to form 8647, 86, like to get rid of, etc. 47, the president of the United States. And he posted it. And that was taken very poorly, because there is an interpretation of 86 that means to get rid of permanently, like with the fishes. And people didn't like that. And so he followed it up with a post saying that he found those shells on the beach. Like he was walking along the beach, listening to the theme from Baywatch, which is really the only thing you should be listening to when walking on a beach, that or Steely Dan. He's not cool enough to listen to either of those. So he's probably listening to, I don't know, at this point, hopefully his ABCs so he can become literate. And he's like, oh, I came across these shells. I happened upon them, and I took a picture because I thought it was a political message. So after he got roasted for that, he now is going around late night shows and trying to distance himself further. So the true sign of a cowardly man, he's like, oh, my wife told me to do it.
Beach, what happened? You were walking on the beach and you saw this on the beach?
Yeah, my wife and I, Patrice, were walking on the beach and saw those numbers in shells on the beach. And
You didn't do this, somebody else did this.
Yeah, somebody else did it. We were on a walk preparing for this week, the rollout of my book. Yep. She looked at it and said, why'd someone put their address in the sand?
Oh.
Sure.
Right.
And then we stood at it, trying to figure what it was. And she'd long been a server in restaurants. And she said, you know what I think it is?
Yeah.
I think it's a reference to restaurants when you would 86 something in a restaurant.
Right, it's off the menu.
Yeah. I said, no, I remember when I was a kid, you'd say 86 to get out of a place. This place stinks, let's 86 it.
I was a bartender. You would 86 a customer if they were getting drunk. Like, that's 86.
I was a plumber, and 86 meant, wow, you're showing a lot of butt crack. Now, I was a goose entomologist, and we always used to say, man, all geese have 86 feathers. Just making stuff up on the spot. Amazing. I was walking through Chicago, and then these two men in MAGA hats came up, and they started beating me with a Subway sandwich and shouting, this is 86 country. You know, that's believable. The story changes every single time he tells it. And by the way, one of the greatest tells for when someone is lying is when they remember stories in crystallized, explicit detail. Whenever they tell you a conversation word for word and not like, I'm paraphrasing or something like this. Whenever they say, I said this, read from the script. And then she said this, read from the script. And then I thought, ha, 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 ha. Yeah, excellent. That's believable. Grand stuff. All right, last but not least, the big, beautiful bill has, in fact, been shoved forward. And I'm told, producer Daniel, check on this for me, just for kicks and giggles. In fact, did the final bill contain any of the SALT deductions that the blue state Republicans really wanted in there? I ask because I saw Chuck Schumer whining about it. Chuck Schumer's very, very upset at the moment. And Chuck Schumer is upset, he says, because the SALT deductions are something that's good for New Yorkers, or I'm kind of confused at it. But anywho, before all of that came to pass, we'll point out very quickly, Representative Lawler, one of these blue state Republicans, did waltz forward to say, we need SALT deductions. We really need people in red states to be paying for people living in high tax blue states, the states they choose to live in. Not a good argument at all.
From 2020 and 2022, we flipped 10 seats in New York and California. We have a 5-seat majority. And so it was New York and California that delivered the majority. Obviously, two states, we can all agree, poorly run by two terrible Democratic governors and supermajorities in the state legislature that have passed insane legislation, increased spending. In New York, they've increased spending by $100 billion in a decade. We have the highest tax burden in the country. In my district, 3 of the 4 counties that I represent, Maria, are 3 of the top 16 highest property tax counties in America. So when you take property taxes combined with state income taxes, it blows well past the $30,000 cap, which is why this matters so much. And my point at the end of the day is, if no bill passes, the SALT cap goes to unlimited. Now, it would also be tied to the AMT coming.
By the way, that's not true. The SALT cap goes to unlimited. No, it doesn't. So, by the way, I do want to point out, just as a kick, producer Daniel says that the deal does include a higher SALT deduction now of $40,000 annually, an increase from the current $10,000 cap. Johnson's initial offer, Speaker Johnson's initial offer, was $30,000. That is, in fact, really, really, really wild. If that particular, again, the SALT cap, the idea right now that there are particular blue states who vote for high tax policies, and then they think, well, we'll just get out of it because we'll force the red states to pay for it. That ain't going to fly in the Senate. That is not, in fact, there's no way that John Cornyn says, yeah, that's totally fair. Excuse me, John Thune's like, yeah, that's good. No problem. I very much doubt it. Chuck Schumer did say the so-called SALT deal is a humiliating failure for New York House Republicans. Donald Trump came to the Capitol to intimidate them, and in less than 24 hours, they've bowed to their king. Their capitulation to Trump on SALT is a slap in the face to Long Island, the Hudson Valley, and hard-working middle-class families from across New York, which is really weird for Chuck to say. It's really weird for Chuck Schumer to go to bat for SALT deductions. Why would you suggest that SALT deductions are bad? Aren't you the senator, the Democrat senator of New York? Are you suggesting that there are high, unreasonable taxes in New York State? Yes. Yes, in fact, there were. So, that all said, we're going to wrap it up for this evening. Thanks for stopping by the Tony Kinnett Cast. We'll be back tomorrow for more excellent nonsense that I'm sure is going to break between now and then. Have a wonderful evening and take care.